This is my Halloween story to you. Halloween is celebrated annually on October 31st. The high priests known as the Druids or the Samhain or modern-day Wicca all practice witchcraft, or what they call the craft. On October 31st, it's the longest night of the year. Darkness is stronger than light. It is the longest night to do evil. The high priests will put on their robes and masks, so when they call up the dead, the demons would not attack them because of the mask. They would have bonfires in the center of Stonehenge. Stonehenge was made so when the screams of the sacrifices would go out through the stones, it would put out such an eerie sound that the locals would hide in their homes in fear. And the people who would talk out against the Druids and their religion would be captured for the sacrifice of the dead. And they would pull tricks on them. Big steel pots boiling where they would put frogs, rye, and mold that would practice LSD that would cause them to see illusions as devils and demons. And this high would last 3 days, and they would tell them they are captured to bob their heads in the boiling water and grab an apple if they could with their teeth, and they could go free. But if not, they would throw them in the fire and burn them alive. And some would try, and their faces burned beyond recognition. And believe you me, they would scream out in pain, and the locals would tremble. They believed if you would carve out a face on a pumpkin to scare the most terrible demons known to the Druids, his name would be Jack. That is why they call it jack-o'-lantern. Does any of this sound familiar to you? Will you put an ugly face on your jack-o'-lantern to keep Jack away? I would say Happy Halloween, but it doesn't sound too happy to me. Boom!
Oh, no. Could this be true, ladies and gentlemen? Is there really such sadistic people called the Druids? Well, history proves that it is. Stonehenge is a real place. It was designed so when the screams would come through the rocks, it would echo down through the hills and the valleys, and the screams would sound so eerie that it would put the fear into the people who lived nearby. Some Christians tried to talk out against the Druids and their sadistic ways and their satanic rituals, and they would take some of them for sacrifice on the night of the dead, and they would tie their hands behind them and tell them in the big pots where they put up their witch's brew with the mold from the rye that made LSD and the solution from the frogs that would come off of them and cause hallucinogens and other spices and marijuana and different stuff that would cause hallucinations. They would put into their pot, and they would put apples in it for flavor. Of course, the boiling water would make the apples soft. But their little tricks, they would tell the people, if you can grab the apples with your teeth and bring them up out of the boiling water, we'll set you free. Of course, no one could do that. Maybe one or two. Because this scalding water would cause them to scream out in pain. Ah! And the apple would fall from their mouth. They would throw them into the flames. But every once in a while, one would grab into the core of the apple and pull it out, and they would let them go. And the people of the village would see their face, all scarred and bubbled up and melted from the hot, boiling substance, and put fear into them. Well, Jack was such a mean demon. The devil was in a tree when he came out of the grave. Jack ran over and put a cross on the tree so the devil couldn't get down till he gave him what he wanted. So he couldn't go to heaven, and the devil didn't want him because of his trickery. So the devil says, I'll give you a spark that will give you power. So Jack took the pumpkin, and they put a spark inside of it that made it glow into the ugly face of Jack. Oh, you've heard of it, jack-o'-lantern. Yes, the people of the village would make ugly faces in their pumpkins and set it on the porches. So when the demons came up at midnight and went out through the village seeing who they could consume and possess, would see the scary faces on the pumpkins, the jack-o'-lanterns, and go to the next door. Sometimes a person would be walking down the street and torn to shreds because of the demons. Does any of this sound familiar to you? Bobbing for apples, jack-o'-lanterns? Oh yes, it's real. It's real. There's good and there's evil. And on October 31st, the longest, darkest night of the year, when darkness is more powerful than light, the night of the dead, when the druids conjure up and make sacrifice until the dead, they call it All Halloween. Yes, you've taught your children to worship with the druids. You will make your pumpkins to keep Jack away. This is my Halloween story. What's yours?